Welcome to the Book Solid podcast. I am your host, Hannah Caitlin, and I am here with my co host, Stephanie Mack. And today we have the absolute honor of getting to chat with another New York Times bestselling author. Today we have Martha Hall Kelly. And if you have followed my Bookstagram account for very long, then you know that Martha's books are some of my favorite historical fiction novels ever. Martha has written so many wonderful historical fiction novels, but the one that she's most known for is Lilac Girls, which has sold over 2 million copies, which just blows our mind because that was Martha's debut. And we are just so thankful to have you here, Martha, chatting with us today and giving us a little bit of your time. So thank you, thank you, thank you for being here.
Thanks for
Welcome.
having me. This is so fun.
Yes,
I've been looking forward to this all week.
we have to. Yes,
Us
I think
too.
Lilac Girls was one of the first historical fiction novels that I read when I got back into reading. And it was one of those late night nursing babies, holding babies books. But it just, I think, like most of America, it just gripped my heart. And it is that little trend that says, "What's your Roman Empire?" that you think about all the time. Lilac Girls is mine. I will admit it.
That is so nice. That makes me so happy.
And
you.
my Lilac Girl story is the beginnings of my own personal book club in the flesh that I am a part of. We started in 2017, and Lilac Girls was the second book we ever read. And I, prior to that, had never been a big historical fiction reader. And I started reading that book, and I mean, it did set the bar so high for historical fiction because it was such a page turner, like the page turning aspect of that book and the multiple women and the characters, and then the need to deep dive so deep afterward. For I just couldn't get enough of these surgeries and what had happened. I still think about that book. So I'm
Wow.
just so honored to talk to you. It really just, something about it gripped me. And something I always remembered about that book was the singing of the telegrams, the news.
Oh,
Something about that really stuck with
are
my
you talking
heart.
about the electrician that sang? And
Yes.
Yeah, that's a true story.
That's a true story.
Yeah. Yeah.
As I was reading that, I remember just having tears and the way you painted it so well. So it was
That's
just
making
one of
me
those.
sad too. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, it's just so beautiful. And then that really showed me, oh, historical fiction is powerful, and it's a way to really learn and grow as a reader and a writer and just dive into these enriched worlds. So thank you
I'm
for,
so glad you feel that
yeah,
way. I think when something's based on a true story, it
yeah,
really it resonates even more.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yes. Well, we are going to start with Lilac Girls. I know that's probably when you talk to people like us, that's probably what everybody wants to focus on. We're going to focus on it for just a minute, and then we're going to dive into some of your other projects and things
Nice.
like that.
I
But
love
we would
talking
love
about
to
it.
know what inspired Lilac Girls from the very start.
Oh my goodness. We'd have to go back to 2000. It took me a long time to write that book. 'Cause
Mm,
I'd never written a book before. I didn't know how to do it. But it was a gray Mother's Day, and my mom had just passed away. So I was really sad. And my husband said, "Why don't you go up and see that house you've always wanted to go see?" And he was talking about the Bellamy Faraday House and Gardens, which is in Bethlehem, Connecticut, which was about an hour from where we lived. And we lived down in Fairfield, Connecticut, along the coast. And he did not have to ask me twice. We had 3 little kids, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I just thought I need to just have a little me time. And I love old houses, and I love lilacs, and this house is famous for its lilacs. So I went up there and I took the little tour. I was the only person there that day. Now, if you go to that house, it's packed during lilac season
mm,
and other times too with book clubs, and it's
Mhm.
pretty amazing. But at the time, I was the only person there, and I did the little garden tour by myself. And then I thought, well, I paid for my admission to have the house tour. Why don't I go do it? And I'm so glad I did,
Mhm.
because I discovered the true story. If you go into that house, it's a beautiful old house, and on the second floor, they have set up in a hallway like a landing, Caroline Faraday's desk, just as she had it when she was alive. You know, she passed away in the 90s. And the docent was talking about Caroline and how she was a Francophile. And I asked her about a photograph on the desk, a black and white picture of about, I don't know, 50 or so middle-aged ladies lined up for a picture. And she said, "Oh, those are the rabbits. Those are Polish Catholic women that Caroline Faraday brought over. She brought them from behind the Iron Curtain because the Nazis had experimented on them. They were Girl Scouts. They were very young. They were between 14 and 21, all of them. And she brought some of them to that actual house. And I drove home that day, and the Nazis nicknamed the rabbits, and I couldn't stop thinking about that story. And so I started going up to the house, and there is down in the root cellar under the house is a research center now at Caroline's archives. She has two others, one in Paris and one at the Holocaust Museum. But I just started going up there to research her. And I did that for, I think, like 5 years. Yeah. And no thought of writing a book at all. Yeah.
Wow.
That's incredible. So before that point, you were a stay-at-home mom?
Yes, I had been an advertising copywriter. You know, I wrote commercials. And then
Yeah.
my son kicked he was the third one and a large child. He kicked the slats out of his crib and walked out. I think I kept him in.
Oh my gosh.
He was 8. Is
Wow.
that too long to leave a child in a crib? No, just but, they were a handful. You know, I had 3 kids, and I finally thought, "You know what? My career is over. Maybe someday I'll have a second act, but for right now, I really have to focus on them." And, yeah, this just, like, kind of took over my life. It was so weird. My husband, accepted a job. Once my kids got a little bit older, he accepted a job at the Weather Channel down in Atlanta. And we moved down there, and I didn't know anybody. I was like the weird northern lady, you know? And so I took my son to high school. He was 17 at the time. And I dropped him off, and I went through the Starbucks drive-through and got my usual decaf cappuccino grande. By mistake, the barista gave me a caffeinated one, and I went home, and Lilac Girls just started pouring out. I had been to Catholic school for high school, and I remember the nuns used to talk about marrying Jesus, and I used to think, and the ecstasy that came with that, and I just thought, I will never have that ecstasy. That I'm not gonna be a nun. So, and then that day when I was writing, I just thought, this is my ecstasy. This is really, why didn't I do this before? So yeah, that's how it all started.
It's
Wow.
amazing. You're
That's
speaking to
not the
my
origin
heart.
story I thought you would
I
give.
know. I am 38 years old now, but from 22 to 27, 21 to 27, I was an advertising and marketing copywriter in the business world.
No way.
Yes, I was. I worked full-time for a PR firm as their senior writer, then at a big commercial real estate firm as their senior business development writer. Like, copywriting was my thing. And then I didn't go back after maternity leave. I thought I was going to go back, but it was an intense job, and I decided to stay home with my oldest. Now my
Wow.
girls are 11, 9, and 6, and I've been a stay-at-home mom this whole time. But then I was like, I'm going to write a novel by the time I'm 35. So I did, and now I am writing novels, and it's that advertising copywriting background comes in a whole lot of handy, I will
It
say.
really does, doesn't it? Because you have to
It
do all
does.
your own kind of, like even when you're querying, for example, writing that little paragraph, that's advertising.
It is. And
Yep.
just the nitpicky grammatical rules that I still just are drilled into me. You just got to know it all and just how to sell. it's all of it.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
love that. I love that that's your background. And I know
Yeah.
too, you, Kristen, Hannah as well. I love talking to women who made that decision to stay home with their babies for
Mhm.
a while because that's where their heart was at the time. But then you had this whole second act in these books in you.
Yes.
It's just beautiful. I
We
love
have
to
so
hear that.
many authors that come on here and that's their origin story. They're like, "Well, I was a stay-at-home mom. In the middle of the night, I started writing a book." So
Yeah.
we love it.
Yeah.
It
And I love to
pulls
hear
us
that it
out.
just possessed you like that, that
Mhm.
magical
Yes.
cappuccino.
I'm getting chills. Yes, it possessed me. Yeah, my family doesn't allow me to drink caffeine because it makes me crabby, but that day, I don't know. I thank you, Starbucks. I'm so glad.
This is amazing.
I had an editor at the time. We had met a woman um, up in New York who said when I talked to her a little bit about the true story, she said you should write this. This would make a great novel. And so I thought, well, maybe I'll send it to Betty and see what she says. And so I just started sending her chapters, and she was like, "Yes, yes, keep going, but add dialogue." And I was like, "I don't know what they said." And she said, "It's a novel, make it up." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I have 64 of them now, how to write a novel books, and
Yes.
I love them so much. I'm always up for a new how to write a novel book. But
Yeah.
at night, I would read how to write a novel books and history books because I was a terrible history student. So I had to learn
Hmm.
about World War II. And then during the day, I would write. And then at night, like dialogue, for example, I would either Google how do you write dialogue, or I would look in, my books to find.
Yeah.
So I feel
Wow.
like I had a really good education, these 64 teachers.
That's amazing. Do you have any favorites or a
Oh, yes.
couple?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. I really love, what do I have over there right now? Let me go get them.
Yeah, please.
Not
I
but
couldn't agree more. I have said this before, but I feel like some of those books are just cheat sheets. I'm like, I
Mhm.
can't believe you're giving me the recipe, to write a novel. And it's amazing what you can learn from just reading
sorry.
about it.
Just get a whole handful of them.
No, I love it. I mean,
Yeah.
64.
Me with
And
my
to
one
be
little Stay cat over here, like,
I know, but to be able to write a book like
yes,
Lilac Girls with this
you
kind of
have to have it.
self-education,
Yes.
like I'm so impressed.
Okay. I don't have, I must have it downstairs, my very favorite one, which is called The First Five Pages. Have you read that?
I've never read it.
So good.
Okay.
Love that. And then there's a whole series of these, the elements of fiction writing, conflict, action, and
Oh.
suspense. And then they have
Oh.
scene and
Oh,
structure,
wow.
plot. Or maybe this is different. This is plot and structure from the Write Great Fiction group.
Oh
And
my
so these
goodness.
are
I
fun
love
because
that it's a
if you're going,
series.
you know what, if you're planning your new book, like I'm planning a new book right now, you can just read the scene and structure,
Mhm.
um, characters and viewpoint. And then at the beginning, I read a lot of Saul Stein.
Hmm.
I feel like he was my professor. He's a little crabby, but he's very uh, specific. It's like
Yeah.
he would say, you
Yes.
have to write in scenes and,
Yes.
things like that. And then I really like Donald Moss. And the other thing about him is he is a literary agent.
Yes, he is.
And I feel like if you've already written a book, writing the breakout novel is good because,
Mm.
it's if you want that novel that's going to like really,
Yeah.
really sing. So those are my faves.
Okay.
And of course, before and
Amazing.
after the book deal, if you're published, or even if you're not, it gives you the inside scoop. That's by Courtney Mom. That gives you the inside scoop. And she has a great Substack
Mhm.
on how much you should be paid, how will you be paid, all the kind of nitty gritty stuff about being an author.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We're going to link all of these listeners because this
Yes.
is a stack and there were several in there that I've never seen before and I probably have about 30 on my shelf and it's always growing and every time I right before I write a new story I'm doing that. I'm refreshing, I'm reading and I recently discovered the beauty of those scene planning books that really just help
Mhm.
you scene and overall
Mm.
structure just to kind of come up with the shape of the book and what that should look like and what it looks like for best-selling books. There is a formula that hits with the human spirit, like to make a book
Absolutely.
sing.
And, even if you're not a plotter, which I am, even if you're not into plotting, I think that, there's something to be said for the three acts and the whole rising tension. And, you can deviate from that at your own peril, I think. And people say, oh,
Totally.
well, I want to be creative. Well, be creative within that format.
Structure.
Because you know what? If you want to sell your work, that's what they're going to expect. And you guys
Totally.
know this already. I'm
Yes.
not telling you anything.
No, we love it. I just, while we were talking about this topic of writing books and getting into some of this fun nitty-gritty business stuff, I thought we would ask you this question from one of your fans and our listeners who wanted to ask for your perspective, Martha, and what you thought on finding an agent or a PR person after successfully publishing one book and not yet having a second finished. Should she query before that book is done? Should she wait? Does having one book under her belt help her, hurt her? Do you have any thoughts on this? And the three of us can all discuss too, but we would love to hear from you about this. It's a very unique question, but one that with self-publishing on the rise and maybe smaller press, we don't know exactly how this person has been published, but what are your thoughts?
I wish we had more information, but from what we have, first of all, congratulations on publishing your novel, the first one. I mean, that puts you in such a tiny little, percentage of the population, because so many people want to write a book, have written a book, but haven't quite gotten it out there. So that's really exciting. But I'd love to know, was it independently published? Was it with Big Five, or who
I think I
published
have
it?
messages from her, so let me look.
And then I want to know if she had an agent.
Yes,
So
so
what happened to
she
that agent?
published through, or her editors were through Hope Books.
Oh, my
So
friend
Stephanie
Jill
knows
did
more
that.
about that.
So they are essentially, it's like self-publishing, but they're amazing. They're a bit hybrid. You hire them to do it all for you, and they do a beautiful job. Like they have and you have to apply and have a great book, and then they publish the book and get it out there for you. And it's newer. I think they're just maybe in their first 50 or so authors. So I would say it's sort of a hybrid. Small press is probably the best way to describe it.
So does it sound to you like the question is, how can she get published by a traditional publisher?
Yes,
that's what I think.
Okay. So of course that requires getting an agent. So I'm assuming she doesn't already have an agent. To me, that's the hardest part of it. Do you agree with that?
Yes,
I do. I 100% do. And our listeners know this. I always feel like a broken record, but I self-published 2 books, and both of those I queried, and I came really close the first time, and then it was during the pandemic. I didn't get an agent, so I self-published the second time. I signed with the wrong agent, had to part ways. It was really painful and hard. Self-published again. But that agent is so hard to get because they are so busy and so overloaded. But that's also, to me, I think the biggest gatekeeper to the whole thing, because we can't reach publishers. We're not allowed, we shouldn't be able to as authors. They are the ones. But if you get a good agent who has those editor relationships, that's the key. If they believe in you, that's what I think. That's harder generally.
I got lucky. I was kind of, I don't know, naive about the whole thing, but I went to a writers conference and I got a book at the time. Now it's all online. But it was by Chuck Sambioko, or I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but it was How to Get an Agent. And I think it's still around, but now all the information's online. But it was just pages and pages of agents and what they represent. And I picked 5, and I sent 5 queries, and I thought I'll self-publish if I don't get any interest.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I set myself a limit because I had queried before a few years back before with like a devotional Bible study, and I was super naive. And when I got all those rejections, I was like, this is never going to happen. This is just not it for me. And so when I wrote my novel, I was like, I'm going to set a limit. I know I can self publish. I know I can be successful self publishing with Bookstagram. And I was like, 5 is it. If those 5 say no, that's not the path God wants me on, and I'll self publish.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's really smart. But you hear stories like Stephen King's. I don't know if you read in his writing book, which
On
is so
writing.
good, how he would take his rejection letters and put them on the spike
Yes.
office.
So
It was
good.
Stephen King.
mhm,
But I thought, I am not doing a spike full of rejection letters. I just
Mhm.
can't.
mhm.
I just my ego and my
Yes.
heart just I couldn't take that. I'm not strong enough. I don't
Yeah.
think. So I was really lucky when I sent out 5, and the first, oh gosh, maybe like 2 or 3 days later, I got a call, and it was a woman crying. And she said, I'm at my husband's bedside and I just finished this book and I need to represent you. He had just had open heart surgery, but
Gosh.
I ended up not, that didn't work out, unfortunately, because my, long story, I had a lawyer that it was during the holidays, and they say don't query during the holidays, but I did, kind of naively, because my husband was like, you've been working on this long enough, you should
Mhm.
send it out. So I said, okay. And
Yeah.
it was like right before Christmas. And anyway, the lawyer kind of stalled things a little bit, and then the other 3 of the 5 other ones came back and offered me representation, so I chose one of them. Alexander
Mm.
Machinist is my has been since Lilac Girls, so my wonderful agent. But yeah, that's how it happened for me. So
Mhm.
I feel like I should have struggled more, that's kind of like the thing, but,
Mhm.
that's just the way that it happened for me. But I feel like, that story was so like, on paper in a query, um, it kinda jumped off the page, not
Mhm.
because of my writing, but because of the true story of it, and
Yes.
the timing was good because historical fiction was kind of at an
Mhm.
all-time high,
Mhm.
and, it just was the right place at the right time, and
Mhm.
so that really factors into it too, and you
Mhm.
never know, and we all know how long it takes a year or so for most people to write a book, at least, takes
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
3 years, but in those 3 years, like, you can't start out going, "Okay, rom-com stuff is hot right now," and then in 3 years, it's like, "Oh, shoot, why didn't I write, fantasy or whatever?"
Mhm.
Mhm.
So, I think you just have to write what you think is really phenomenal, but that's the place to start, I think, because
Yeah.
Mhm.
by the time you're querying, you have a finished novel, a finished
Mhm.
manuscript. That needs to be something that when you query, they cannot ignore it. And
Mhm.
I know that sounds like a tall order, but that's the way that I would approach it. I wish someone had said that to me,
Mhm.
because people are gonna, not only agents, like say you get published with, book A, and people still have to, just from the log line, go, yes, I'm buying that. So
Mhm.
Mhm.
if it were me, that's where I would start today, is with something that just like grabs you by the throat and doesn't let you go, because otherwise you're not going to break through with agents. They're not going to, even if you do, the agent won't be able to sell it, no matter how
Yeah.
beautiful the writing is.
Mhm.
Mhm.
All right, that was a really long tangent.
No,
But
I think that's such good
No,
advice.
yeah.
I mean, and there's just all the chatter and the truth in the fact that it's a crowded marketplace in every
Mhm.
genre, and you just have to stand out. And it has
Yes.
to be something extraordinary, like you said,
Yeah.
that just literally grips you and doesn't let you go. And this is just something that I did differently. I joke 3 times the charm because it was my 3rd book that got me an agent, but I started with the log line and the back cover copy for the first time.
Mhm.
And I didn't stop. Like I said, I have an advertising and marketing background, and I
Mhm.
didn't let myself even write the book until it was the log line and the couple of
Mhm.
paragraphs that I needed to read that book myself. Like, this
Brilliant.
is,
Brilliant.
I don't want them to
That's
say
where I
no.
start too. Yeah.
So yeah, that really helped me. And then as I was writing, I'm like, is this living up to what
Yeah.
I want it to
Mhm.
be?
Love
And I
that.
have the title. We'll see if the editors end up liking the title, but I really like it. So yeah, I think sometimes backing your way into it. But thank you for that advice. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yes.
That's so smart. And not everybody does that. And I feel bad for people who, they'll come up to me at a book signing or wherever and say, I have this book and can you read it and help me get it published? And it's like, well, you need to have something that you can sell to an agent.
Right.
Mhm.
And everything that you just said, if you
Yeah.
start there, because otherwise you've wasted like 3 to 5 years of your life.
Yeah.
And then you go, oh, I guess I need to write a different one. And that's the other thing about writers. Sometimes people will say, oh, well, I have this one book. And I'll say, well, if that's not selling, write another one. Just write it. Write it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Like if you're a writer, you sit down and write another book
Hmm.
because that's what you have to do as a writer. And
Yeah.
oftentimes they'll go, I know, but this is my book. And I'll be like,
Right.
Yeah.
that's not the way it works. You
Yeah.
are a writer, so you write many books. And
Yes.
Totally.
so I think that's a hard thing for people.
I
It is.
know.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yes.
I would just say to the lovely gal who asked this question, my other good friend, Jill Gunderson, maybe you know her because she also published through Hope Books. What I would tell Jill and what I would tell you is exactly that. I wouldn't
Mhm.
query now with your first book because I know from my agent and being signed for even several months that they want a new book. So don't try to
Mhm.
query your book that's already out with Hope. That's just, I would say,
Oh,
I think,
definitely.
and that's going to help. I think I'm biased because I was self-published first, but I think that's only going to show initiative and that you've
Yeah.
started to build a reader base. Write a brand new book and approach it fresh and query that book. And
And
then
it
you can
sounds
say, I
like,
published this first book. Look at
yeah,
that. And
it sounds like she's already got the second one, though. Is that right?
I think
She's working on another
she's
one, and she was
working on a second
yeah.
one.
I'm
I
wondering if
wanted to,
she could query before she finished the second one, since she already does have one published, or should she wait till it's finished?
she should wait.
Definitely wait until it's finished because
Mhm.
what if the agent says, okay, send me a full manuscript? And then you're like, hey,
Mhm.
I mean, that
Totally.
you don't want to look like it's your first rodeo.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just finish it. I would also say get an editor, hire an
Mhm.
editor.
I can tell you from the girl that asked this question from personal experience. I queried my novel before I finished. It was like had like 5 chapters left. And I didn't even know if I was going to write those 5 last chapters because I was just kind of in a funk and just not knowing really the path I wanted to take. But when she asked for that manuscript request, you better believe I wrote those 5 chapters. I was like, as fast as I could. And I think that showed too because she's like, how, like, she knows now that I work fast and things like that. But I really wish, like you said, that I had finished it, sat on it, hired an editor, which is something I'm turning a book in to Tyndale next week or this week. Stephanie's going to make me turn it in this week. But
Hey, you're turning it in.
I'm scared. But anyways, but I even got an editor for that one just to make it the best it possibly could be. And I know I have some friends that are self-published and they're like, that's your publishing house's job. And I was like,
Yeah.
I know, but I
Mm,
wanted it, and I got a little confused when my agent recommended that. She was like, hire an editor, send it through an edit, see what you have,
absolutely.
let a fresh set of eyes look at it. And I was
Yeah.
like, why do I have to do this? I'm traditional, I'm not indie. And I got a little frustrated. But then I was like, after I got that edit back, Stephanie can tell you, I was like, it needed it so bad.
Yeah.
And now I feel good about what I'm going to turn in. So I definitely agree with that piece of advice that you said, is
Yeah,
hire an editor.
I know.
Yeah.
My last question for you, Martha, on this topic, because our listeners like to know, what was it about your agent that you signed with that stood out when you had these several offers and options? What made you sign with the agent you chose?
Oh, that's a great question. She was young and hungry. Now she's like, I don't know, agent to the stars. She's repping Kevin Kwan and like all these
Wow.
really high, she goes after some pretty deals. But I liked that she was really, she gave it to me straight. Um, and she said, you need to go back and take a year and redo the character of Herta
Mm,
because she's Jewish. And she said, since I was 14 years old, I've read every Nazi memoir I could get my hands on to find out why. Why did the Nazis do that to the Jews? And she said, tell me the answer to that question through Herta. And
mm,
I just thought, that's really interesting. Everybody else was willing to just publish it as is, but I went back and I redid it, and I'm so glad that I did. Yeah. So I liked that, but I also liked her kind of no nonsense way of telling me, this is good, this isn't.
mm,
And so I'm glad, totally glad I went with her. And then I said, and she said, we're going to take this wide. Once I came back with the revision, and I worked for a year with no contract or anything. And I just thought,
mm.
well, I don't know, we'll see. And once I gave it to her, she read it like pretty quickly, probably faster than she reads my stuff now, to be honest. And she read it and said, okay, we're going to go wide. I was like, what does that even mean? Like, I didn't know, and I still don't know much lingo. And I guess that just means that they're going to like submit it to a lot of different publishers. And then
Mhm.
I was in our apartment in New York City in my pajamas, watching the Today Show. And my husband had gone off to a meeting, and my cell phone rang. That's the other thing. They don't usually call you with bad news, although
Mm.
sometimes, but good news. And she said, are you sitting down? And I thought, oh man, I've always wanted someone to say that to me. I sat down, and actually, I was already sitting. And she said, we have our first offer. And I said, take it. And she said, no, I'm gonna get an auction going and we'll see. And I said, I don't know. Because she had told me she had never not sold a book for under, a certain amount of money. And I thought, please, I don't want to be the one that is the exception. And I would take the offer, and I'm sure it will be fine. And so she was like, no, no, no. And then they had an auction, and I mean, it was crazy. I was flying back to Atlanta that day, and or the next day, and I said, well, should I not go? And she's like, no, no, you just go along your whatever you do. And it took 2 days for the whole thing to pan out. But that morning, I took a shower, got clothes on, and I walked from the West Village all the way up to Saks Fifth Avenue, which is a long way, and I bought a suit. Suit. And I thought, I'm going to need a suit if I'm an, which was so ridiculous. Once I
I
had the first
love that.
meeting, they were all dressed in like dresses and, nothing special. And sensible shoes because they run around. And so I just thought, and I had gotten like all dressed up and everything. But it just goes to show, what you think before and the reality of it.
Mm.
And, it was really exciting. I never wore the suit. I wore something else. Never wore it. Yeah. But it's a
What a
symbol.
memory.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was in shock, I think, because I wanted it really bad. I mean, I had worked on the book for 10 years.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget when the second offer came in, I was in a cab with my daughter, Mary. And yeah, and I was like shaking her so much. I was
Oh,
2 but it was just,
it's amazing.
honestly, it feels like it was surreal. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. And did you end up signing, was it a 1 book deal, 2 book deal, 3?
Well, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah.
That was a one book
Yeah.
deal. And
Yeah.
then my husband later, after the paperback came out, he said, and that's where Lilac Girls really kind of took off.
Yeah.
And he said, you should go back to them. If you want to write more, you should go back to them with more ideas, which I did. And I had done all that research. So I thought, why not write about Caroline's family? Because I know all about that. I don't have to go do more research. And so I wrote Lost Roses about her mother, and then Sunflower Sisters about her great grandmother, because all of that was down in the root cellar, and all there's and letters and everything. So that was really, really fun. Yeah.
What a ride.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
could you ever have foreseen that it would be the wild international success that it has become? I mean, 2 million copies, all of these countries. It's also very interesting you said that it didn't really take off until the paperback, because isn't that usually it's a year later, right?
Well, it got on the list originally, but
Okay.
just I mean, by the skin of my teeth. And it sold a lot. Like when you go back and look at do you ever do that? You go into your publisher's thing, and it has the whole sales chart and everything. I love doing that. And it still, sold really well as a hardcover. Because remember, you've got ebooks, you've got audio. But then once it did come out in paperback, that is when, like the Skim had it. And do you know the Skim?
Yeah, absolutely.
That was really in Costco. It was a pandemic. And so that it went kind of crazy. And, the price point's so much better in a paperback. You can get years. So yeah, it was, I did not expect it, to be honest. I had gone to Ravensbrück. I took my son with me, and the slat kicker who kicked the
Power Man.
Power Man. I told him that he could have one beer if he came with me, because in Germany, 17 is the drinking age. And he got way more excited about, going to concentration camp with his mom. But it was really beautiful for the two of us to go to Ravensbrück together. He became a film major, and he filmed everything at the camp. It was, sometimes really hard.
Yeah.
But I went again with this friend that I made. She was making a documentary about the rabbits, and we got to meet the rabbits. It was unbelievable. And I came home from that trip, and there was a book waiting that the book had already been published, one book. And I just thought, who is going to read this? Nobody. And, because that first week, as you guys know, is really, it's like, you don't know how it's being received because everybody's reading it.
Yeah.
And so by the first Wednesday, that's when the New York Times list comes out. I thought, there's no way that that's going to happen. Who knows me? But I went to my local UPS store, and I went in, and he has a lot of rules. And, he's got like little signs all over the place. No cell phone usage, cash at this register. In with my book, and I handed it to him to send to a synagogue, wanted me to come speak maybe, and then wanted to read the book. So I handed it to him with my Amex, and my cell phone started going off. And I thought, I'm not answering that in here, because he's outside. And I answered it, and it was my editor saying, "You made the New York Times list. Oh my God." And I was just like, what? I still kind of can't absorb that. So I came back in after that, and I said to the UPS man, "You may wonder what that phone call was all about, but I'm a bestseller." And he was just like, "Okay, whatever. Here's your Amex." And I thought, well, I've been humbled. He really doesn't care. Not a big reader, but that was it. That was, catapulted it off. And I could not have been more surprised, to be honest.
Incredible. My question that just popped into my mind, what are the biggest ways that this kind of real literary success has changed your life? Has it changed a lot? Or do you just feel like the same old Martha? Like, what does it feel like to sell 2 million books? It's amazing. And I just wonder how it changes your life.
it's such a good question. Right away, it changed
Yeah.
my life.
Yeah.
I in so many ways. I mean, we don't even
Mm.
have time to go into it, but in the main ways, um, it gave me more power as a human being
Mm.
Mhm.
and as a wife and a mom and a writer with my publisher. It just completely changed everything. First of
Mhm.
all, my husband kept saying, "No dog. We're not getting a dog." And it happened. I said, "I want a dog." And he, "You get a
That's
dog."
perfect.
And sometimes I regret that, you know, pulling that card. Ollie is fabulous, and that's an example. And then my
Yeah.
kids started kind of like respecting me more. I know
Yeah.
it's
Oh,
really,
love that.
they wanted to read my chapters.
Mhm.
Before, it was like I would beg them to read them, and actually, they were wonderful about it. But once it became a reality, like this next book is actually going to be published,
Yeah.
they were like, "Sure, I'll read it," because it became more real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then with my publisher, that totally changed things too. We,
Mhm.
in a lot of ways unspoken, but all of a sudden they'll send a car for me or do whatever. And I just, it was subtle, but it was definitely there. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
uh, it was on the New York Times list, the paperback, for 54 weeks.
Wow.
Wild.
And every week they send, or my publisher does anyway, in purple capital letters, an email that says where you are on the list that week. And
Mhm.
it was just like, it wasn't stopping. It was just so bizarre.
It's
I
just
That's
still,
amazing.
incredible.
I still
Yes.
can't believe it.
Oh
But
my
I
gosh.
think that it just shows the word of mouth situation. One
Mm-hmm.
woman came up to me at a book event and she asked me to sign my book, and that book was barely holding together. It obviously had been like dropped in the
That's falling
water.
apart.
Well loved, like
Yes.
Hannah. And she said, this one book was passed around my retirement community in Florida. 74 people have read this book. And I
Oh,
was just like, oh my God, that's just amazing.
so
The word of
amazing.
mouth from those 74 people has, it's that kind of a thing. But I think that it's all about the story, though.
Mm-hmm.
That is not, um, I mean, it's partly the way that I told it, but it's also the fact that that really happened
Mhm.
is pretty, and it was just waiting for me at that house.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird. I feel like it really was preordained. When I
Yeah.
walked
Mhm.
in there, I felt like Caroline Faraday just tapped me on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
She was like,
So
"You're as
good.
good as anybody to
Yeah.
tell it, get it out there." Because it built that house a lot.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The money it's brought into the house, they've painted the house, they've wallpapered it. I think she kind of saw ahead, like, okay,
Mhm.
Yeah.
this to happen.
That
That's
reminds me a
amazing.
lot of when we had Patty Callahan Henry on the podcast. We
Oh,
did,
she's so great.
she's so great. We did Becoming Mrs. Lewis for one of our book club picks for the podcast. And she said the same thing about Joy Davidman. She's like, I just feel like she came to me and I was the one to write this story. And similarly, she talks about the way she was really possessed by the story and then by the love story and all of it. It's really magical. And it seems so daunting to me to tackle historical fiction,
Mhm.
but I feel like if you really get possessed by a true story that needs to be told, I mean, you're the
Well,
one to, you're the messenger. You've got to do it.
right. That's the thing. And it
Yeah.
gets you up at 7 o'clock every morning.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Boy, it gets you to your typewriter.
And I
Yeah.
love that you said earlier at the very beginning, you said that you weren't very good at history in school and things like that. That's just amazing to me because you think historical fiction, you're like, okay, this is a huge history buff, and they just know all the things. But it's amazing that that shows,
Yeah.
like Stephanie said, when it just grips you, it grips you.
I know.
I'm not just a bad history student, like actively. One of in first, my teacher actually said to me, what is wrong? Why? Because they put me in like an advanced class with all these boys, and I was like the only girl. And I don't know, I just hated the way the wars and the guns and the planes, and they all knew like they were all way into the like equipment.
Yeah.
Then I went to Catholic school and I had a female teacher, history teacher, and for the first time I started really liking history because she taught it from a personal point of view, from about the people and often the women, and that's interesting, I think.
Mhm.
So it's a lot of it's how it's taught, but now I love World War II. I just, oh my God, the Greatest Generation, and I
Yes.
find it really, really fascinating.
There's so many stories. I don't think that genre will ever die. I really don't think, because there's just so much. Everybody's looking for hope, and it's like that generation and that era is like it was just full of it. So I think that's amazing.
I so agree. Yeah.
That's my comfort read, as odd as it may be. I just love it.
Me too. It's a kinder, gentler time,
Mhm.
even though,
Mhm.
Nazis. It was easier in a way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the Greatest Generation. Oh my God. It
Yes.
really is true.
Well, we would love to ask you one last question, and this one is from a listener and a fan of yours, and they would love to know if you have a dream book project that, if budget, time, travel were not of any concern, what would you do?
No one has ever asked me this.
Such a fun question.
Yes. Just got to think on this one.
I feel like I just finished my dream project, and
It's
it
amazing.
wasn't
Well, we love
expensive.
that.
It wasn't expensive. But that's my book that's coming out next summer. And I've always wanted to write a book about my mother's time on Martha's Vineyard, growing up. And she was there during World War II. So that's what I just wrote, the Martha's Vineyard Beach and Book Club. She had a book club back in the day. So it was, I mean, talk about the Greatest Generation, and so that was my thing that I've always wanted to write about. But I think I'd have to choose what's going to be my next book, which is a book about the folk music scene on Martha's Vineyard in the 1970s.
Mm.
That
Carly
sounds so
Simon and
fun.
James Taylor. Um, and I am so excited to write that book, and almost too excited, like
That's so good, though.
I
Yes.
know.
planning it, but I'm kind of afraid to, put words on paper because it's such a like sacred thing to me. But yeah, that's my dream come true. My sister's a DJ on the vineyard, and we're both
Amazing.
really. And I remember the '70s on Martha's Vineyard, the rock and roll or the folk music thing of the '70s. So I can actually, it's nice to write a book that you can remember what happened. World War II, obviously, I wasn't here then. But I'd also like to write a sequel to Lilac Girls.
Mm.
And
Please.
I think that's going to require some travel. And I have talked to my editor about it. And I also have started outlining that as well. So that, I mean, after everything that's happened with Lilac Girls, to write a sequel to it would really be a dream. I've never written a sequel before, so I think that would be super fun.
Yes.
So yeah, that's what
Amazing.
That's so fun. But I'm here for
And
the sequel.
yes, and you have a new cover coming tomorrow for the book,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
Oh my God, I have waited so long for this to come out.
It's beautiful. We will post it on Instagram, everybody.
Yes.
Because
after it comes out.
yeah,
Yes.
when the
And
cover
I know this is a
Yeah.
podcast, but I found
oh
this
my gosh.
photograph.
It's
And
so
It's
oh,
perfect.
you like the pink?
Yeah.
Yes.
I
Because
love it. It's so summery.
the early reader copies just came out. Do you guys want one?
Yes, please.
Yes,
Oh my
please.
gosh. Yes,
Yes,
yes. And we'll have you back on next when it comes out.
Yes.
That would be
Yes.
great. I, you know, I'm curious to see what you guys think because I got Lilac Girls vibes writing it, and
Mhm.
I have not cried so much writing a book. It's very
Oh
emotional,
my
but
God.
it's very hopeful. Uh,
Mm.
it has a frame, which is a girl named Mari Starwood. She's 34, lives in Los Angeles, comes to Martha's Vineyard. And she has found the name of a famous Martha's Vineyard painter, Elizabeth Devereux, in her deceased mother's effects. And she's come under the guise of taking a painting class to Martha's Vineyard to say to Mrs. Devereux, how do you know my mother and
Mhm.
what's going on? And so she finally confronts Mrs. Devereux and says, my mother's never been outside California, or had never been. And Mrs. Devereux says, I think you're mistaken. And I need to tell you a story. And Mrs. Devereaux tells her the story of these two Smith girls, sisters, who lived on that farm that they're on. And the story of them and their book club and how Mari is connected to them.
Oh,
Yeah.
That's amazing. Yes.
I'm
Yes,
all in.
please.
I
Yes,
can't wait
please.
to read it. And that cover's just begging to be stashed
It
in every
is.
beach bag
Ah,
all
and
summer.
every
And
book
I
club,
I
literally.
know.
But you know, funny, my daughter, who I have two daughters and a son, and Mary is the middle daughter. She's actually got famous on TikTok during COVID. Her name's Mare Cal.
Oh
She does
my God.
voice acting. Do
I
you know her?
love that. No,
She
but
does
I'm gonna look her
Oh,
up right away.
yes.
impressions of famous people. Anyway, she the first thing we did once we in the book, it's all Martha's Vineyard in the 40s, but a lot of those places are still there today. And one
Yeah.
of them is this beach club that's still there, but in the old days it was called the Bayside Club. And this book club, they start an actual book club, and it's called the Martha's Vineyard Beach and Book Club. And my daughter Mary made a logo for their beach club, and she put it on beach bags. And
So
Yes.
cute. Oh.
them already.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
so
Yes.
cute.
Fun part. But
Oh,
she
I
got
love
one with
it.
like a longer handle that's like light blue on the straps, and it's
Yes.
white canvas, and then another one for me that is the shorter straps. They're like navy blue, like the classic beach bag, and then they both have the logo on them.
So
Oh
I
my
think that
fun.
would be
goodness.
so fun. Do you guys want
Yes.
Yeah.
them when they come?
Oh, are you kidding?
Yes.
Are you kidding? Oh my goodness.
What do you like the longer strap, like using it as a
I'll
purse?
take whatever.
Anything.
Are you
Just
Yes.
serious? Okay.
oh my
Yes.
goodness. I have a California girl travel question for you. So I have three daughters, and every time my daughters turn 10, they get to take a trip anywhere in the US. And it's my mother, me, and the girl, we go travel. And my 9-year-old for next year has picked Nantucket. Of all places, well, what's so funny is she picked Nantucket, and I'm not like super familiar with the geographies and the like rivalry that Ellen Hildebrand like talks about. But what I'm wondering is if Little Miss wants to go to Nantucket, how far is Martha's Vineyard from Nantucket, and can we do both in one trip from California?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay, good.
First of all, a 9-year-old, how does she even know about
Right?
this?
Yeah, I got her a sweatshirt from like Abercrombie Kids, which is really cool right
Yes.
now, and it's a Nantucket sweatshirt. And
Oh,
then
they're
she's so
everywhere.
precious.
Yeah.
Yes, Nantucket. And then I admittedly talk a lot about how it's been on my bucket list to do that as a California girl. And so she's like, of the three, she looks like me, she acts like me, she's kind of my mini me, and she's like, we need to go to Nantucket for my 10th birthday. And
I
I'm like,
love
I'm
it.
not. Are you sure? Like Disney World, New York City? No, Mom, we're going to Nantucket.
Nantucket.
So
When is her birthday?
it's May 26th. So next year we are going to
Oh my
go over Memorial Day weekend.
That's the pub date.
Are you serious? Oh my gosh, chills.
And we're having a huge party on Martha's Vineyard for the book
Stop.
launch.
Oh my gosh. I'm freaking out. We're coming. Well, I'm coming.
Like, we're
So
coming.
15 minutes invited, but that is amazing. Oh my gosh.
Actually, it's the 27th, which is a Tuesday.
Oh,
But
well, that's fine.
I
Oh my
don't
gosh.
know if it's going to be that first week. It might be the week after
Yeah.
that, whatever.
Oh my
But
gosh.
the Martha's Vineyard book launch is going to be at this place called the Carnegie. It's going to be pretty.
Oh,
It's going to be amazing. It would be so fun. But
I
you have
would,
to that too.
yeah,
I'll
Hannah, you can
fly
come.
out.
Just fly up. Okay, well then it needs to happen, and I'll
Here's,
take all the pictures with my book
yeah,
in Martha's Vineyard.
a lot of people are planning on coming, but
Yeah.
we don't know the exact date yet. But yes, so here's the thing: you can do Nantucket. You
Okay.
know, if we look at the map, Nantucket is further out in the water.
Yeah.
Martha's Vineyard is closer to the shore, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still 45 minutes by ferry.
Okay.
That's why you need the arc so that you can read about Martha's Vineyard because it's very similar to
Yes.
Nantucket.
Totally.
Nantucket's smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Is Martha's Vineyard has, I think, 7 major towns.
Okay.
Nantucket
Oh, a lot bigger.
has
The
one. I
one.
mean, Wisconsin arguably is one of maybe 2. What else? It is really crowded in both
Mm-hmm.
places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Memorial Day, not so bad. Actually, I was just there in August.
Okay.
I was just there. And like mid-August is the like height of the craziness, but if you
Mm-hmm.
go in May, it'll be better. And
Okay,
what we
great.
do is fly to Boston
Mm-hmm.
and then either, there are a lot of different ways to get to Nantucket. You can fly to Nantucket from Boston and then take
Mm-hmm.
a boat. There's a ferry boat that goes from Woods Hole on the
Yeah.
mainland, Cape Cod,
Yeah.
that goes to Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket. But you
Okay.
can also go from Nantucket to Martha's Vineyard.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I'm
So that's the way to do it. And then
I'm so
I
excited.
don't know if you're big flyers. Like, would you want to fly from Martha's Vineyard back to Boston, or would you want to go to like Plymouth Plantation with the girls, or
Maybe.
other fun stuff on the coast?
Yes, as much as we can, honestly, because it's the cross country flight. It's like once you're there with the time change and all of that, it's the 5.5 hour flight. So I mean, I want to do as much as we can, and we're gonna let her miss a couple days of school because what
Yes.
better education than
Right?
exploring that area?
Well, it really is true. I mean, growing up in Massachusetts, Boston has so many field trips to all the cool stuff in
Oh,
Boston.
yes,
They have a fabulous science museum. They've got Faneuil Hall, which is shopping and food and, wonderful. So I would at least try like one day in Boston.
love it. Okay, we will.
How old are the other girls?
So it's a solo trip. So we only take the 10-year-old. Like as just pouring into her little soul, reaching double digits. We did New York City for my oldest one 2 years ago, and we had the time of our lives. We did New York City tourist style, 10-year-old style. We saw Wicked. We did a stagecoach ride through Central Park. We went to Serendipity. It was so fun. So it's kind of a real special, and then that memory of with her mom and her grandma. Because with 3 girls, they, don't get a lot of one-on-ones. So yeah, so just 10, one
The
10-year-old.
other ones will be very jealous of this.
They will. I know. It's going to be special. And I think she is just so cool for picking such a fun, unique destination. I
And
mean,
I understand if you can't make it to Martha's Vineyard, but we'll see.
you know what?
We'll figure it out.
It shot way up on the list
Right.
after this conversation. I will tell you that. Especially after I read the arc, I'm going to be like, get me there now.
Yes.
And if you're going to, I'm excited about the music book as well. That's
Yes.
just
Oh my God.
amazing.
I am so excited. Yeah. That's really going to be fun. I've never written about the 70s before.
Oh my goodness.
And that whole world is so
Yes.
cool of
Yes.
rock and roll. But
Oh my goodness.
but yeah. And you can always email me if you have questions about
Okay.
Nantucket.
Thank you.
I don't know about it as like I do Martha's Vineyard,
Yeah.
but I can send you in the right direction.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff coming
I
up.
know. Well, this was just an absolute blast for us, and I feel like we have a new
too.
friend, and we can't wait to just read more from you.
Yes.
I'm curious. I wonder this about historical fiction authors like you. Do you think you would ever write something like fully contemporary in
Yeah.
here?
I already-
really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
This Martha's Vineyard book was supposed to be a contemporary book.
No way.
Yeah. It was called The Girl on Windy Hill.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
Amazing.
then I wrote back to them and was like, I want to do this one instead. And they were like, okay. And then
Well,
they paid more because contemporary is a risk for them with me.
Mhm.
that's so interesting.
Yeah.
And
So
the
I'm happy
story,
about that part.
yeah.
And so it was a risk because I really like the contemporary one as well.
Yeah.
But Random House, I'm a historical fiction writer.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they would prefer me to stay in that genre.
Yeah.
But someday I'll send you the Girl in Windy Hill. It's kind of fun.
Oh, I love that.
It's actually written about my house that I'm sitting in right now. The setting of it is here.
Oh,
Yeah, I wanted to
amazing.
build my town.
I love
That's
it.
amazing.
Yeah, I named it something else, but yeah, I loved writing contemporary. I mean, it's so much quicker.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I
Yes.
wrote that in record time. My husband was
Mhm.
like, "Well, maybe just write that from now on, like James." Yeah, I can't. Oh, that's my mom right there
Oh,
from
Yes.
from this book.
oh my
That's
It's
goodness.
weird that she's like joining the conversation.
Yes.
It's sweet.
But yeah, but
Love
email
it.
me whenever, whatever questions that you have,
I
and
will.
I'm happy to help in any way.
Thank you so much. You're
Yes.
just
Well, thank you
wonderful.
so much for joining us. And if you are listening, just if you have any more questions for Martha Hall Kelly, feel free to send them our way and we will try to pass them along. But Martha, thank you so much for hopping on with us and just sharing your heart behind all of your stories and some tips and tricks for those that are listening and might be trying to write. And we are just so thankful that you were able to join us today.
Thank you. I had a blast.
Thank you.